We're back to the Jelly Studio, and I'm making two boxes that'll be half the length and half the height of the benches. So they're the next smaller size in the series, from the table to the bench to the boxes. I had some wood left over from the benches and desks that had been sitting for a while, so I wanted to re-face joint those pieces. They were still basically straight, but I wanted to plane them down from the 1.25 inches or so that they were down to closer to an inch, as the boxes didn't need to be quite as thick as the tabletops. Now the box dimensions will be 10 inches tall and 12 inches wide, and my pieces of wood aren't quite that wide, so I needed to add a piece. So what I did was cut my wide pieces in half and then added a 2-inch strip in the middle. This seemed better than just adding a piece on the side. And for the bottoms, that'll be 12 inches wide, which is a little bit wider. I thought I'd use biscuits on those joints to make them a little stronger. And since the box will be used as a step stool, I wanted that bottom piece to be a little bit stronger than just the straight joints between the pieces of wood. For the two short ends, we wanted handles at each end. So the thought was to cut out a hole to make that handle. And instead of gluing everything together and then just cutting out a hole with, say, the jigsaw, what I wanted to do was leave out a little bit of glue in the strip I was adding in, and then I could drill out each end of that portion that I didn't glue and then knock that piece between the two holes out and get a handle shape cut in the two ends of the box. So once I had the two holes drilled, I could knock that piece out. What that gave me was a nice machined shape instead of a sort of free-handed hole cut out with a jigsaw. I removed the glue drip so that I could lay the piece flat again on the table saw and cut the widths to their final width. Then I started cutting the pieces to length. And I realized I wanted to re-face joint the faces with a very light cut just to get all the pieces in line and nice and flush with each other. I could have probably not jointed and planed everything in the beginning and just glued everything up, then jointed and planed everything in the end. I wanted to miter the four sides together, so I had to cut a 45-degree angle on each of the sides. I cut one side first, quickly, without really measuring. For the second side, I could then measure the length that it needed to be. One thing I wanted to do before I glued the piece together was to round over the edges of the handle on each of the ends. I like the idea that the piece is sharp and crisp everywhere but right where you touch it. And right where you touch it, it's smooth and curvy and feels nice to the touch. And making the bottom, I wanted to have the bottom float in a frame so that it could expand and contract over time. So I cut a dado in the sides to receive the bottom. And it's a 1/2 inch wide and a little bit less than 1/2 inch deep. The dado needed to wrap all the way around all four sides. Once I had the dados cut, I could measure how wide I needed to make the bottom and the length that the bottom was going to need to be. So once I had the size set on the bottom, I could then cut a rabbet all the way around the bottom piece, and that rabbet would fit into the dado that's on the four sides of the box. Then I used biscuits to hold the mitered corners together, and the biscuits will help keep the corners aligned as well as give them strength. The glue up was straightforward, but there's a lot of little pieces to keep track of and do quickly, so it had to be done sort of all in one big move with lots and lots of clamps to hold everything together. And Calvin made an appearance while I took the clamps off. And there's one box all glued up, and it seemed to come out pretty well. Then some final sanding, and I wiped everything down with mineral spirits to get the dust off. I used a simple polyurethane finish, and I did 2 coats. I sanded between the 2 coats, so the finish came out really nice and smooth. These need to be a little bit more durable than many of the wood turn things that I do, so I had to use a little bit more durable finish. Now for function, these can be boxes that you can put things in. And one thought was that they could be a desk that you could sit at and hold a laptop. Now sometimes the thought was to put the benches together to make a platform for someone to speak in the space. So we needed a step to get up to that platform. That's one of the functions of the box as well, which is why it's a little bit heavier and thicker than it would really need to be to just be a box. And there it is. Thanks for watching.